Ever since he first broke out in the late 60s, Dustin Hoffman has given several entertaining performances, showing his skill playing both comedic and dramatic roles. He has shown his range in a bunch of roles, going from neurotic to confident to wacky to completely serious. He's one of those actors who's able to find that right balance in showing his character's enthusiasm or his quieter, more thoughtful side. And I'm going to count down my favorite performances of his, and as you can see, some of his finest work goes in all sorts of unexpected directions and choices. Starting with Lenny Bruce in Lenny. Playing the famous comedian who shocked the world with his routines and language, Hoffman was able to tap into Bruce's multiple sides and how he was continually willing to push the boundaries even if it meant potentially going to prison. He essentially has to play Bruce at multiple angles. We see him performing stand-up in the way he gets the crowd excited or offended by his routines, him trying to court a woman he loves, and him in the courtroom arguing his case to the judge. There are levels to his performance that are necessary in showing us his different emotions and charms, along with his self-destruction that would lead to his death at 40 years old. Hoffman needed to depict Lenny Bruce's ferocity and willingness to go to certain places in his stand-up and to make it believable, and he absolutely pulled that off with his performance here. Stanley Motss in Wag the Dog. This satirical comedy is most well known today for somehow predicting the last few years of Bill Clinton's presidency, along with showing how media manipulation can affect how we might see some foreign country we know little about. It's a very smart and biting film, and one of the best aspects comes courtesy of Dustin Hoffman's performance as producer gets roped into this plan by the White House's top spin doctor. He depicts Stanley's enthusiasm in putting this whole show together and plays extremely well off of Robert De Niro as they both figure out the best way to distract the public. Hoffman supposedly based his performance on producer and former Paramount executive Robert Evans, with Evans himself even making the comparison. Whatever the case may be, he provides several hilarious line readings, and from his scenes, you definitely get the sense of this being a longtime Hollywood producer who just wants to put on a big show for the American public. Master Shifu in Kung Fu Panda. This is a role that required Dustin Hoffman to really capture the annoyance felt by this kung fu master at having to train this panda who falls into his lap. He nails that aspect of Shifu, thus allowing for plenty of funny scenes with Po. However, he also does really well in depicting his smarts and the slowly growing respect he forms for Po. The more serious scenes, especially with Master Oogway the Turtle, nicely performed too. We also get a sense of how much he cares about this martial art and his concerns that this clumsy panda being named the Dragon Warrior can have on it. This is a character who could have wound up being really unlikable with his behavior towards Po, but the script and Hoffman's performance are able to give some understanding of his side of things. Part of what makes Kung Fu Panda such an enjoyable film is the odd couple dynamic between these two characters, and while Shifu's not in the sequels as much, he still gets a few solid scenes in those. Celebrity casting is common in Western animated films, and this is definitely an example of an actor perfectly suiting the character they're voicing. Ted Kramer in Kramer vs. Kramer. This story of divorce is directed with a lot of subtlety by Robert Benton, and that comes through in the performances, including Hoffman's. Through him, we see a father trying desperately to raise his son properly and the difficulties that arise from this. The film and Hoffman show that it's not necessarily an easy relationship, and that adds a certain realness to the story as they both deal with Ted's wife Joanna wanting to leave. His scenes with Justin Henry as his son are some of the best in the movie, along with the moments he shares with Meryl Streep as Joanna. The film really works not only thanks to Benton's direction and screenplay, but also all of the performances. The high emotions of the courtroom scenes also work, with Hoffman and Streep delivering excellent work. Although I should mention, stories have come out of him taking his method acting too far on set, and regardless of the final result, I don't think using the method should ever be used as an excuse for uncalled for behavior. Kramer vs. Kramer is probably one of the least flashy films to win Best Picture, but its lack of flash is precisely what makes it work, and that extends to Dustin Hoffman's own Oscar-winning performance. Raymond Babbitt in Raymond. His other Oscar-winning performance, he brought the required sympathy to this role of an autistic man whose greedy brother Charlie takes him across country. The film's road trip structure allows for a lot of entertaining scenes with these two, and what makes them work is seeing their relationship grow. It is enjoyable seeing Raymond mess with and frustrate Charlie, but Hoffman is also smart to not make Raymond himself a joke, and plays him mostly straight throughout the film. The joke is instead always on Charlie, and he's the one who has to learn a lesson and change. I understand that since its release, Rayman has developed a bit of a mixed legacy. While it did bring more awareness about autism and autistic people, it's also led to a lot of folks thinking every autistic person is like this, when in actuality those on the spectrum encompass a wide variety of personalities and don't fit into a neat box. You should never think one fictional portrayal of a type of person tells you everything about someone belonging to that group or community. In any case, Dustin Hoffman did a great job playing Raymond and showing his interests. Thomas Levy in Marathon Man. Playing a history student who gets tortured by a Nazi dentist, Hoffman successfully portrayed his character's fear as he gets thrown into this horrifying situation. It's quite an intense role in several ways, and he more than handled the physical demands. You sense his desperation of trying to get out of there, and his screams play a major role in what makes the dental torture scene so infamous. When he's not strapped to that chair, Hoffman also does exceptionally well in the scenes where he plays opposite Martha Keller as his girlfriend Elsa and Roy Scheider as his secret agent brother. And then there are the running scenes, which also show his determination to get out of this. I've actually read William Goldman's book, and even with some of the changes for the film adaptation, including the ending, Hoffman captures the character's personality on the screen. Of course, Marathon Man is also infamous for its story about Laurence Olivier responding to Hoffman's method approach with the remark, "Why didn't you just try acting?" It's a funny story with both in on the joke, but regardless, he still turned in fantastic work as a scared distance runner. Rizzo in Midnight Cowboy. Playing this Weasley character who develops an unexpected friendship with the cowboy Joe Buck, Hoffman took someone who could have been a one-note joke and was able to give him a lot of depth, fleshing out an already interesting character on the page. His interactions with John Voight as Joe are able to show the blossoming partnership between these two, and the two actors successfully bounce off each other. With his nasally voice, Rizzo could have been annoying, but he never is, and that's a credit to Hoffman's performance. There are a lot of other great touches in his performance, most famously the scene where he shouts, "I'm walking here," to a taxi, which has understandably become one of the most famous scenes of Dustin Hoffman's career. As his health slowly declines over the course of the film, he depicts that well with the proper pathos and subtlety. The audience needs to believe that after their initial scenes of hostility, Joe and Rizzo become friends, and the actors more than pull off that feat. Is it any wonder this character would later inspire a Muppet? Michael Dorsey and Dorothy Michaels in Tootsie. There was a time when cross-dressing comedies were common, but what makes Tootsie stand out is how it's able to explore sexism through Michael's decision to pretend to be a woman in order to get acting work. Hoffman is able to completely become Dorothy and make it believable that nobody would suspect who he really is, while also developing her personality as willing to stand up for herself. Hoffman also does well playing Michael and give an idea of why others find him difficult to work with. Considering Hoffman's own reputation of being a perfectionist, some have wondered if he was making fun of himself, although this has been in dispute. He displays Michael's flaws and the way he has a tendency to upset those around him, particularly the women in his life. It's a multi-layered performance, not just because of the dual role, but how Hoffman depicts the sides to these two personalities. Tootsie is a very funny movie, but it also tackles some worthwhile themes, and even Hoffman himself said he learned something about how he viewed women during the production of the film. Captain Hook in Hook. Every actor who has played Peter Pan's sworn enemy has taken the opportunity to go all out and depict his thirst for revenge against the boy who never grew up. Hoffman provided his own take here, which is fitting, seeing as he's going up against a Peter who did become an adult. He shows his conniving and scheming ways, he manipulates Peter's son, as well as the pathetic person underneath who constantly craves someone to fight. Some of his best scenes are with Bob Hoskins as Smee. They chose to portray them like a married couple, and that worked in showing the partnership they have as Smee tries to support his captain. Hoffman also completely disappeared into the role and finds a lot of humor in several of his scenes. However, he never shies away from what an evil person Captain Hook is, and that certainly makes him a very memorable villain. Before I reveal my #1 Dustin Hoffman performance, I'm going to mention a few other worthy performances of his that I considered for this list, which were Papillon, Little Big Man, All the President's Men, Ishtar, Hero, Last Chance Harvey, and the Meyerowitz stories. Also, shout out to his bit role as Mumbles in Dick Tracy. But my favorite Dustin Hoffman performance is Benjamin Braddock in The Graduate. Yes, the role that made him famous, and understandably so. He depicted the lost nature of this character and his nervousness and uncertainty as he enters a new world and tries to figure out what to do next. There are several hilarious scenes that capture that feeling Benjamin has, especially as he navigates Mrs. Robinson and her behavior as she seduces him. The film also shows his development and how he eventually forms a romance with Elaine Robinson, and Hoffman really understood how to show the multiple facets of this character. His flaws are evident, and Benjamin is certainly not someone to aspire to, but that's also what makes him so interesting, as his postgraduate life takes a surprising turn and he deals with various complications. Mike Nichols' decision to cast Hoffman in this role was an inspired one, and even though he was almost 30 when he played Benjamin, there was still that youthful feeling in his performance. Although it is funny thinking about the alternate universe where he played Franz Liebkind and Mel Brooks, the producers, instead. His career would have probably gone in a different direction, but he instead got this role, and we got the other performances on this list as a result. Now let me know your favorite Dustin Hoffman performances in the comments, and I'll see you next time.